Coming up on Tech News Today, the Moto G wants to be your hot, cheap new phone. Also, Sony is surprised that people are still listening to music. Who knew? And Twitter wants to help you track or change or do something with history. Timelines, all that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, November 13th, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT11. And by RingCentral. We do everything in the cloud. That's why we love our cloud-based phone system by RingCentral. Zero startup costs, and RingCentral is $20 a month per user. Try it now with a 30-day risk-free trial. Buy one desk phone, get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. Call 800-543-9980 or visit ringcentral.com and use our promo code TWIT. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Aya Zakhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And we would invite you into our warm and comfortable room of glorious tech news. Pay attention to our exhibit to the left, the top 10 stories of the day, the news fuse. I don't know what any of that meant. As expected and pretty much entirely leaked, Motorola announced the new Moto G, a more affordable version of the Moto X. The phone has a 4.5-inch 720p, 329 pixels per inch display, the Snapdragon 401.2 gigahertz processor, Giga RAM, 3G, not LTE, and a alleged all-day battery life. Chips with Android 4.3 Jelly Bean, but they guarantee that you'll get KitKat or 4.4 by January. Custom shells are available in multiple colors, and it's on sale today for £135 in the UK, as well as in Brazil, other parts of Europe, and it's coming in a few weeks to the rest of Europe and Canada. Other countries like the United States will get the phone early next year. Here in the U.S., the 8-gig version will sell unlocked for $179, and the 16-gig will run you $199.
Sony's launched an official PlayStation app for Android and iOS devices. The app gives access to the PlayStation Network mobile devices, allows you to chat with friends, get game alerts, and buy games from the PlayStation Store before pushing them to your PS4 to download and install when you're away from your console. The company has also bowed to some fan pressure, with president of Sony Computer Entertainment, Shuhei Yoshida, telling Giant Bomb that the PS4 development team is now working to add the ability to play both CDs and MP3 files in a post-launch patch.
Sprint CFO says that almost every phone available on the Sprint network next year will be able to support the Sprint Spark network. Now, Spark is Sprint's tri-band LTE network. The only exception is that Sprint's not sure if the next iPhone will be able to support all three bands because, you know, Apple doesn't talk to its partners.
They'll support it if you want that support. They'll tell you. Hey, if you're watching Netflix on a Roku or a PlayStation or a smart TV or a Blu-ray player, you'll notice they've got a new look. The redesign adds more images and info to the screens in the hopes that you'll watch more things. The new look will not come to Apple TV or Xbox because those manufacturers have stricter design restrictions.
Microsoft is eliminating its infamous practice of evaluating employees on a bell curve, an effort to bolster teamwork as the company restructures to focus on devices and services. Managers will no longer be required to rate workers on a fixed scale of performance rankings. Lisa Brummel, who's Microsoft's executive vice president of human resources, said in a memo to the company's 99,000 staff. The new initiative follows the One Microsoft strategy that was unveiled by outgoing CEO Steve Ballmer back in July.
Jawbone introduced a new wireless fitness tracker called the Up24. The wristband supports wireless syncing, finally, using low-energy Bluetooth. The Up24 also comes with an updated app that will give you recommendations like what time to go to bed to get more sleep. The Up24 costs about $150, comes in two colors, black and dark orange. It's being sold online today and hits Best Buy and Apple stores next week.
I usually go to bed earlier to get more sleep. but I don't have a job on up. So, hey, if you live in the big city and you use Verizon, get ready for slower internet. During an investor conference, CFO Fran Shamo said the large bandwidth usage on their LTE networks in cities like New York, San Francisco, and Chicago caused many users to drop down to 3G. Verizon has the largest and oldest LTE network in the United States. LTE customers make up a third of its customer base, but use 64% of the bandwidth.
The AMD chip known as Kaveri finally has a release date, January 14th. The flagship desktop part for the FM2 Plus socket motherboards will be called the A10 7850K. It'll use 4 Steamroller CPU cores clocked at 3.7 gigahertz and built on an open standard, HSA, that allows different processors inside a system to work together to speed up compute tasks. Cost is still a mystery, as is whether it'll be sold as a standalone part or just in pre-built systems.
WikiLeaks has published a draft of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's a free trade agreement being negotiated by the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, and many other Pacific Rim countries. Much like ACTA before it, the TPP is being negotiated entirely in secret. But unlike ACTA, which stood for Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, the TPP is a wide-ranging trade agreement of which intellectual property provisions make up only a small part. But just like ACTA, the agreement includes stricter laws governing digital copyright and patents. The U.S. and Japan currently oppose a chapter that would balance those stricter laws with protection of the legitimate interests of the users and community.
Twitter is now allowing users to create curated timelines based on hashtags or topics. The feature is available for some on TweetDeck right now, with the full rollout over the next several days. Twitter also released an API that will let developers make their own apps that can create custom timelines. The API is being released in beta and will be made available to a small group of partners.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Squarespace, the fast, easy, awesome way to make your own website, your own space on the web, your own portfolio. I've used Squarespace for years. I use it for my books website. I use it for my sword and laser site that I do with Veronica Belmont, and it just makes things easy. If you haven't tried making a good-looking website, if you're like, I can't do a website, my website's all, they're ugly, go try out Squarespace. You don't even have to give them a credit card right now. Pick a template, choose a couple colors, put in your content, and you'll be amazed. They make it look good. And on top of that beautiful design, they're going to make it look good on every screen. So if you're looking at it on a phone, it's going to look like it was designed for that phone's screen, even a little 3.5-inch screen. Look at it on a tablet, it's going to lay out, be usable on that tablet, but it's going to adapt on the fly. So if you're looking at it on a laptop or a desktop, it's going to look good there too. It's easy to use, incredibly easy to use. They do all the hard stuff behind the scenes. You can get in there and look at the code if you need to. Their code's beautiful. You might want to take a look at it if you're a code admirer, but you don't have to. And it's search engine optimized. They include the hosting, so you don't have to mess with that sort of thing, bandwidth allocation and all that. Start a trial right now. No credit card required. Start building your website. Find out why I like Squarespace. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code TNT11 to get 10% off and to show your support for Tech News Today. Well, big thanks to Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. You let them know that you thank them too. Squarespace, everything you need to create an exceptional website. Joining us now to discuss the stories of the day, very happy to have back on the show Kevin Purdy, mobile blogger at itworld.com, freelance writer, and man about packets, we just decided before the show. How's it going, Kevin?
Great. Thanks for that title, Tom.
Hey, anytime. You need a new a 3-line bio, a 3-word bio, just let me know.
I do a lot of TCP/IP gallivanting with words and phrases.
That's right.
I'm the Oscar Wilde of the lawn set.
Hey, that's pretty good too, actually. Use that. Yeah. Or are you? Let's start off talking about this Motorola GIS. It seems to be very affordable.
Yeah, Tom, you hit all the major specs in the news feed, so I don't have to go through that again. But the biggest shocker is the price: $179 for an 8-gigabyte model, $199 for a 16-gigabyte model. These devices are unlocked, by the way. Like you mentioned, the backplates are removable for customization, but the battery is locked down. There's no micro SD card slot, no LTE, so that seems like a kind of a bummer. The Verge was saying that the device itself almost indistinguishable from the Moto X in design. It's a little heavier, a little thicker, but you might not notice that unless you were holding both devices at the same time. Compared to the Moto X on the software side, there's no active notifications, quick capture, or touchless control because the Moto X has a special processor that's in that device in the X and not the G. Motorola is launching the G in Brazil and parts of Europe today. Availability in the rest of Latin America and Europe, Canada in the coming weeks. U.S. is going to be getting it on prepaid brands next year. Moto G buyers also get 50 gigabytes of Google Drive storage for free. And there's also an FM receiver. So if you want to listen to the radio, you got that option as well, calling it like unlimited music if you wanted that. Kevin, do you think this is going to get Motorola some major market share around the world?
I would say so only if I understood how the rest of the world buys their phones. I mean, do you know what the unlocked price is by any chance?
Yeah, it's $179. That is the unlocked price.
Oh, that is?
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, I didn't mean to set myself up for that, but that really is the news, I guess, isn't it?
It's worth punctuating in that way, yes.
Well, and we're so used to seeing $199, $179 as a subsidized price. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around that, I know.
Yes, apparently it was for me walking into this. In answer to your question, then yes, I do. I can't imagine that's not it. I don't know. Android does better, I think, outside the U.S. than in, actually. And this is a pretty intriguing entry into the kind of newer worlds of Android, especially on prepaid and European and worldwide bands. It's a really interesting phone.
And it's not 3G, which again
4G.
in Europe is not as big a deal because
it's not LTE.
It's not LTE. You're right. I'm sorry. It's not 4G. I try to avoid saying 4G. It's not LTE. It's 3G, which is not as big a deal in Europe and Brazil and the other places where it's launching first. So I guess that makes sense. I wonder how much of a difference that'll make to people in the United States. And I wonder how many people will have that confusion of saying like, oh, well, $199, that's not that big of a discount, right? Because they may not realize that it's unlocked. Or maybe if they go to T-Mobile, they will. And the T-Mobile says, yeah, you pay $199 and you're done. There's none of that payment plan stuff. I don't know.
And I think most of the prepaids in the U.S. are mostly non-LTE anyways, are they not?
Yeah, that's true. For the most part,
so,
I think you're right.
It's aimed right at them, I think.
It's definitely an interesting price point for Motorola if they're going to get more of a market share, because Motorola not exactly tearing it up when it comes to making tons of money. This has got some really great specs, and the thing is though, this is competing up against things like the Asha line from Nokia. It's competing up against the Firefox OS. So those phones probably cost something like $100 unlocked, but if you paid another $80, you get a very, very competent smartphone. This isn't like getting something loaded with bloatware. This is a Motorola product, pretty stripped down. It's got some customizations with Android, but I think this could get people who were thinking about getting their first smartphone going, well, if I just scrounge up another $80, I can get a really powerful phone. And that could be a big deal for Motorola in the long run.
It actually could be free on a provider like T-Mobile if they did take that unlocked price and spread it out, over 12 or 24 months. And those specs are great on the screen. They're okay on the processor. They're okay on the RAM. A gig of RAM these days, not what it used to be.
That's going to age.
KitKat is supposedly much more efficient. So when that comes in January, I'll be interested to see if that actually makes this thing feel a lot faster than maybe it should.
Yeah, I mean, if this is running a gig of RAM, KitKat is kind of optimized, they're saying, down to 512K, so well within the range. Yeah, I mean, you can't deny that the price is impressive. But my recommendation,
512K, or did you mean 512 megabytes?
512 megs.
Because 512K would have been awesome.
Really optimized
I could run it on my Commodore.
Yes, exactly. Now that would be innovation.
You can alter config.sys and run it really well.
Yes, my apologies on that. But yeah, $179 unlocked. I would recommend, if you're thinking about this phone, just pony up the extra $20 for the extra storage space, because I think the $179 price comes with what,
8 gigabytes.
8 gigs. Okay, well, that's not horrible. But
no
for
micro SD.
For an extra $20, you get 16 gigs, so you double it. So might as well. What's $20?
Agreed.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Sony's shock and awe that you still listen to music. They put out this FAQ on October 30th. And among other things, they were saying like, okay, there's a few features we've promised that aren't going to come right away. We'll get to them down the line. Game features like suspend resume or the ability to control someone's game controller over the internet to kind of help walk them through a game or something. Those things are delayed, right? But one of the things that got people really upset was no CD playback and no MP3 playback capability, as well as DLNA, which if you don't know, DLNA is kind of like AirPlay. It allows you to stream things through a device to your television, be able to like take video off your laptop, for instance, run it through the PS4 onto your television. Shuhei Yoshida, president of Sony Consumer Electronics on Twitter, said, "I'll share with the PS4 dev team for future consideration." At first, that was his response to all the outrage. Then to Giant Bomb, in an interview, he talked about how they were focused on the game features. He denied that this was some plan to force you to use Sony's Music Unlimited service. He kind of laughed that off. He said that they didn't think of it. In fact, here's a clip from that show on Giant Bomb.
And we didn't really think about, MP3 or DLNA. We were thought that, we're going to do that eventually. We've been doing it, with all the products. So it caught us off guard. And we didn't really think about it.
Caught them off guard. They're like, what? Why would people? Okay, so they're going to go to the team. They said the teams in Japan and US, the system guys are discussing how and when we could put these features on the PS4. They seem to be scrambling to figure out how to put it back in. Kevin, is this a big deal? I mean, I think they just assumed like, well, people don't really do that anymore.
It's amazing that they don't have any numbers on that, right? Like, I'm assuming that people probably have some privacy concerns, but do they really have no idea how people use the PlayStation? I know a lot of my friends, they use the PlayStation primarily for things other than, Call of Duty. They use it to show Netflix. They use it to, run music during parties and stuff like that. It boggles the mind that in the same breath, they're working on a feature to allow you to control someone else's controller across the internet, but they have no idea how people use their PlayStations.
Well, they could put a rootkit on a CD and they could find out everything if they wanted to. But they don't, probably a little bit burned on that one. But the thing that drove me nuts about this, when I read the FAQ a while ago and I saw there was a lack of DLNA and CD support, it seemed like either they're moving towards the future. The lack of DLNA seemed really strange because the PS3 had it, and that's one of the strongest things about it is that it can find anything on your network, a Windows machine, pretty much anything. So it's much broader than AirPlay because the DLNA is a standard, and that just drove me nuts. As a media box, I get that the PS3 4 is supposed to be about gaming, but to not allow you to have another computer feed that information to it seems a little bit bizarre. The CD playback, originally I was taken aback by it. I'm like, that's weird. Why would they take that out? But then again, I cannot remember the last time I tried to put a CD into a device, because why would you do that these days?
Well, they seem like such minor, even from the outside, they seem like such minor tech hurdles. CD playback, MP3 decryption, and DLNA, they don't seem like multi-year projects.
Yeah, I mean, 78.2 million albums, CD album sales in the U.S. the first half of 2013, according to Nielsen. Now, that's down 14%. That's still 78.2 million. But even if you discount that and say, come on, that's really not that much when you consider the cross-section of the U.S. that happens to have a PS4 and happens to want to actually play CDs on it. But MP3s, like, people are using MP3s quite a bit. You can argue about the CDs all you want, but like you said, Kevin, I think they should know that people do this. Now, he claims that when they talk to people, they don't say, I use my PS4 and I want to use my PS4 for music. But maybe people don't say it because they just assume, like, that's a given. Of course it's going to be able to be a music player.
Well, at what point, though? I mean, yes, they're bowing to pressure, and it sounds like, that they've made a lot of people happy. With a decision to kind of reverse pushing the future on some of their fans. But at what point do you say, okay, well, next year in 2014, CD sales will have fallen more, but we're still looking at numbers in the millions. At some point, the company has to say it doesn't make sense for us to put the R&D into figuring out how to push a next-gen console forward and still have all of these antiquated pieces of technology inside.
Maybe for the CD player that makes sense. In fact, I think it does, if they really wanted to push it that way. But it doesn't make sense for MP3s.
There are pencils that decrypt and play MP3s now.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's a good way to put it. Anyway, I'm still excited about the PS4. This doesn't ruin it for me. The app is out, as we mentioned in the news fuse, and it's coming on Friday, so I'm looking forward to it. By the way, if you want a really good review, check out what Polygon did. They've got not only a great review, as you would expect from those folks, but they put together a really nice multimedia. I don't want to say that because it sounds so 90s, but a really nice web native way of presenting.
It almost looked like an iPad app when I was scrolling through it this morning. I mean, it's quite lovely on the web.
It is. It's absolutely lovely. All right, let's talk about those Twitter timelines, Sarah. This has driven me to start using TweetDeck on the web, by the way.
Well, that's interesting. I've never used TweetDeck on the web, but I've always had the app. So TweetDeck, obviously owned by Twitter now. What Twitter's doing is it's allowing you to create custom timelines based on topics or hashtags or stuff like that on TweetDeck. Now, you might say, isn't that sort of like a Twitter list? Twitter lists are just curated by user. So this would be based on topics. It could be like a tweet by tweet type of a thing. Twitter's also providing an API to allow developers to create streams of information. This is all coming from the public fire hose over at Twitter. So anybody can create an individual streams of data that's tailored to a specific topic. Could be anything that's contained in a tweet, a keyword, a key phrase, something like, let's say, Oscars or iPad mini or something like that. You can hand curate, or you can curate, sort of in a programmed way using the API again, when you say, okay, well, anytime that there's a certain keyword or somebody's name is mentioned or there's a certain location that somebody checks into, every timeline will then have its own permalink page so that you can share with others on Twitter. You could say, here's where my page lives, check it out. I put all this stuff together. It's also embeddable. So this can happen on news sites, or, we could do it at twit.tv or that sort of a thing. So it's not just permalinks on Twitter. We're actually looking at an interesting example that Politico put together that's all tweets based on energy policy. So one of the columns is a list of, people who are in positions of power. And then there's a topic version. And it's, you have to be interested in the subject matter. But this is an interesting way that a site could embed this type of API information fire hose on their own site and use it to their advantage. And it's not too unlike Storify, which is a service that recently kind of pivoted away from a Twitter-only model and is now taking data from Facebook, which is probably a smart thing considering that Twitter has kind of built a competitor. So I've never been able to figure out how to use lists all that well. And I think maybe it was because it felt a little limiting. Kevin, do you think that topic is a better way to curate some sort of a list than actually usernames and people?
Storify is a really close competitor to this. Storify, I think, for a while has let you kind of grab like Flickr photos and Facebook photos and tweets and just arrange them around whatever is happening usually, because that's usually the way things occur on Twitter. You want to grab it at a parcel of time. I don't know if it will be that successful, only because, like you just mentioned, with lists have been around forever. Twitter, I think, has said publicly about how lists are very little used, and I don't think people are in, other than journalists and storytellers and sites like Politico, are in need of capturing snippets of Twitter and saving them for later or sharing them out with the public. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that it's going to be something that most people are dying to do, is show friends all the stuff they curated from their own feed. It doesn't seem like a broad usage feature.
When I saw this, it kind of looked like a response, almost like to Pinterest or something. This idea where you saw some information you liked about somebody, you put it over there. It's like having a board of all the things you've retweeted in some respects, but the fact that it's live so it can change seems a little bit strange. I mean, that's a nice part of Twitter that it's still moving along, but I don't know, other than embedding it for brands and things who want to like maybe spotlight either their talent, or they're going to spotlight their customers or something. I don't really see the huge thing about this, because I've been reading this, trying to wrap my head around it, and I also don't know what apps would bother to take this API and use it.
It feels like you nailed it, though. It feels like companies are such a focus for Twitter now that they've gone public, and advertising and revenue. I think you just nailed it, that this might be one of those features you're going to have to get used to seeing from Twitter that is not entirely average user focused.
Think about like a Q&A session. Something like that happens on Twitter right now, within all of the other stuff that happens on my stream, is always so disjointed and it's kind of noisy and it's a mess. Imagine if you could conduct some sort of a Q&A, and let's say half of your audience is not necessarily following along in real time. You could have sort of this orderly, almost like a Reddit AMA type of a thing that you put together that people can then access. It's got its own link, it's permalink, and sort of see, oh, there were questions and answers that happened. I can see use cases where this makes Twitter a lot more organized, but yeah, I'm not sure how many individuals are going to get a lot out of it.
I've created a timeline for PS4. I want to see how this works, because that's one usage that I thought about, was being able to track something as it's erupting. So Friday, when everybody starts posting about it, if it works the way I think it's supposed to work, I should be able to follow along the conversation. Now, granted, I could just go and do a search, right, and probably do the same sort of thing. But this way, I could curate it, and I could filter it and maybe tweak it and get like a really quality feed out of it. Well, we'll see if it works that way. Curious. Let's take a quick break and thank our other sponsor for today's show, Ring Central. When we built the studio, we obviously wanted to have a phone system. We could have everybody just using their cell phones, but when you're a business, sometimes you need things like a receptionist desk phone, and you need desk phones for certain people. But we didn't want to spend a lot of money on an old-fashioned system with PBX and all of that. So, of course, the famous Russell told us to use Ring Central, and we're very glad he did. We can get our voicemail in our email. They offer the ability to send and receive faxes straight from your email. You can use it on your PC. You can use it on your smartphone. You can use it on your tablet. New faxes even arrive in your email inbox, so you can always stay on top of business. And you can preview and print faxes, design cover sheets, even sign faxes. That's a big problem sometimes. You can sign them right from your computer. Never have to use a bulky fax machine again. You know there's those people out there that insist on using fax. Don't make them annoy you anymore. Check out Ring Central. They offer all-inclusive pricing as low as $20 a month per user, and you can start right now with a 30-day risk-free trial, and they have a special offer for our listeners. When you buy one desk phone, you get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. So call this number designated for our listeners, 800-543-9980. That's 800-543-9980. Again, 800-543-9980. Or you can also go to ringcentral.com and use the promo code TWIT. That's ringcentral.com, promo code TWIT. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Netflix has a new look, IS.
It's Purdy. Get it?
It's Kevin Purdy.
Okay, I'm sorry I did that, but I had to.
It's okay. It's grade school. It's fine.
All right. So there's a new Netflix UI. It's on a number of devices. So let me describe this UI if you're listening to the audio. If you're watching the video, it makes a lot more sense. Less emphasis on one giant grid. There's a big banner on the top that actually shows it'll rotate 3 or 4 different major titles, kind of like the web version of Netflix. Below that, you'll get a widescreen thumbnail grid instead of the movie posters you're used to. Netflix also added information about why you should be watching a particular title. It uses your social networking ties, your viewing history, and your taste preferences for that. And when you select an episode of a TV show, you get an episode-specific thumbnail alongside the description. The search is revised. It's a lot more visual. And the UI is going to be uniform on the PS3, the PS4, Xbox 360, the Roku 3, some smart TVs, and Blu-ray players. Rollout starts today. The 360 and some smart TVs by Samsung will allow voice control if you have that. The UI isn't coming to every device. The Xbox One and the Apple TV get to keep their custom apps for now. Kevin, what do you think of the new, more uniform approach to Netflix's app? Because it used to be very disparate on different platforms, but now it's going to be very similar on a lot of devices.
Overall, it looks much nicer. And as noted, it shows you big pictures of shows as opposed to showing you little thumbnails of tons of shows you might potentially watch, which for 90% of the time you're using Netflix, you're logging in because you're going to, watch the next episode of that thing you watch all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So I really like it. I think it's a nice step forward. It's interesting how it'll be interesting how they integrate the Facebook sharing and the recommendations and things into this new view. How much noise they allow your friends to throw into your, sometimes ordered and pretty calm Netflix world, which some people really like. Overall, I'm a pretty big fan of it. It just arrived in my Roku, I think. I don't know if I've seen it. I've seen it somewhere, maybe on the Roku, maybe on an iPad, but it's nice looking.
Yeah, my PS3 has not gotten the update yet. I was trying it this morning, and I was like, oh, no more big single grid. It's like, no, I still have the grid. Netflix is saying that once this rollout is done, that means more than 50% of users that watch Netflix on their TV will be doing so through this new UI. So that means that even though the Apple TV and Xbox One will still have a different user interface, 50% of people are still going to be using this one singular thing. I think the emphasis on keeping people watching video, this idea that they stream about 1 billion hours a year, this is going to keep people in Netflix's world, because the grid worked very well on the web. But to transfer that to TV and have a UI that makes you want to continue watching television, I think Netflix has got a nice new look. And the uniformity, I'm surprised about that, because if this app can run properly on a Roku 3 and a PS4, and it runs the same from device to device, it's going to have that. It means it's really, really light, actually, because if you can run on a Roku 3, that's not so hefty.
Developer friends of mine tell me it's a lot of HTML5 and kind of just, creating a frame on your device into their slightly modified and refactored web portal. I might or might not be right about that.
It does still look like a grid-ish thing, though, to me. I mean, it's definitely prettier and it's definitely easier on the eyes. But I tend to end up using Netflix on Apple TV more often than I use it on Roku these days.
Me too. Absolutely.
Yeah, and why do you think that is?
Because, sorry, Tom. It's not just because it looks better on Apple TV, although I do think it does. But, what are the 3 apps I use most? It's like Netflix, Hulu Plus, HBO Go. I mean, as long as they're all on one device, there's just that much less switching back over between Roku and Apple TV. So, in a way, the fact that the new UI is kept off of Apple TV almost doesn't bother me, because the Apple TV itself has a uniform UI.
Yeah. And I wonder if Xbox people might feel the same way. I don't use my Xbox for that, because you have to pay for the service to get to pay for the service. And I don't do that much online gaming, so I don't do that. But I probably will soon, so maybe I'll try it out. We'll see. Hulu also in the news for wanting to be bundled in. Remember, we heard this about Netflix. Now Hulu wants to be bundled in with cable subs.
Yeah, there was the Monday story. I'm sure you guys covered it, although I wasn't on the show, that Sandvine, who's a broadband service, had a traffic report that says Netflix accounts for about 1/3 of peak web traffic in the U.S. YouTube is in second place, about 20%, and Hulu is like not even at 2%. So if you really look at peak traffic, you think, well, who are all these people watching Hulu? Because they all seem to be watching Netflix and YouTube. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Hulu is in at least preliminary talks, of course they cite anonymous sources, to potentially bundle Hulu Plus subscription service with pay TV subscriptions. They're talking to reportedly Comcast, Time Warner Cable, Cox Communications, AT&T, and Verizon, so all the big guys. As part of the deal, consumers would be able to access the service through cable set-top boxes. And Hulu has also apparently discussed arrangements with AT&T specifically to bundle Hulu Plus subscription service with their wireless broadband offerings. So, at this point, it's like, okay, well, I don't have a cable subscription, but if I did, and there was some reason that something like Hulu Plus would provide an attractive UI way for me to be able to catch up on a season of a show that I'm currently already paying for, that sounds good. But all of these providers have already invested in their own apps. So that's kind of interesting to me. You've got Hulu's owners, Disney, they've got their own branded apps for ABC and ESPN and other properties. Fox has an app. FX plans to release its own app by the end of this year, so pretty soon now. So it's sort of like, well, I think, as far as the consumer goes, it sure would be nice to have some sort of a streamlined option. But if companies have already put all this effort into building their own solutions, how much weight do you actually put on a rumor like this? What do you think, Kevin?
I would just be happy if every time my wife wanted to watch The Good Wife at her own pace, we didn't have to think about the way to get to it. Like it was some far off oasis that had limestone and we needed it for our building or something. It's amazing how supposedly we were going to have through Hulu and these other services kind of streamlined, like you're saying, easy options. But with so many channels, they've kind of broken out and done their own app. And you really have to think a lot about what you can watch now and what you can watch later. I do think it's may be great for people who really like paying their entire entertainment bill to one company like Comcast or Time Warner. I think it's really bad for people who are, described in the news as cord cutters. Unless Hulu leaves open its app to all these devices and, kind of becomes like a dual cable / independent, network company. Otherwise, I'd be pretty disappointed to see Hulu give up the fight on bringing in as much content as they can into one bucket.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing here might be an attempt to figure out how to allow Hulu to do more, right? Because the big holdup for Hulu is they're owned by the companies who have a vested interest in you not going and watching things online, which is counter to its own existence. Fox and Disney and its silent partner Comcast, they make their money off carriage fees. They make their money off advertising too, but they make a lot of money off the fees that the cable companies pay them to carry their networks. So they don't want you to stop using cable systems, and the cable systems aren't going to support them if they start putting a bunch of video available on the internet. There's also the fact that they didn't, until very recently, get any kind of Nielsen ratings for your views online. And so they couldn't really sell ads across the platform until now. So you add the fact that now they're starting to get the ability to say, well, when you buy an ad on The Good Wife, it can be rated in Nielsen no matter where somebody saw it. That's a big plus. And Hulu may be saying, look, what we'd like to do, cable companies, is bundle in so you get some of the advantage of us putting things, and that loosens the restrictions up so we can put more shows on Hulu Plus, which in the end might be a good thing for cord cutters.
Yeah, Hulu Plus seems to have an issue when it comes to the selection, or Hulu in general, because the thing is, when you have, let's say I want to go to Xfinity, I can get a lot of the shows you'll have. There's a lot of redundancy. You get Xfinity, you get Hulu Plus. So unless Hulu can somehow leverage itself to get CBS content, to get some of the other shows like USA content, more of those shows on, if they can leverage that with these partnerships with these carriers, maybe it's of use. Because if you just remove, let's say, Xfinity and replace it with Hulu Plus, you're going to get a lower selection. So it's kind of an oddball kind of concept to me.
Right, I want to finish up talking about smart things. Not that we haven't been talking about things that are smart this entire show, but Smart Things is a company that just got $12.5 million in venture capital funding from Greylock and Highland Capital. If you haven't heard of them, they're a platform for the Internet of Things, for connecting your home to the Internet. They started a Kickstarter back in summer 2012, raised 4 times their goal, $1.2 million on Kickstarter for a starter kit. It was a smart hub, an electric outlet plug, some motion sensors, some open-shut door sensors. And they did that as sort of a way of letting people understand how this could be used, sort of as a tutorial kit. They also, this is what's interesting to me, created an open source platform for their devices. They didn't try to lock you in, kind of the opposite of Nest, right? They said, not only are we going to have an API, we're going to just make this open. We're going to have a developer's toolkit. And then earlier this year, they launched an online shop where they said, okay, any of those people out there that are making use of our system and selling devices for it can sell it through our online shop. That way, there's one easy way to find all of the cool stuff that you can do with your home. And now they've got stuff from GE in there. They've got stuff from Schlage and Kwikset, the door handle makers, door lock makers, Eon. And they work with Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave, of course, Wi-Fi. And they're starting to create these kits now that are like, oh, do you want to be able to tell when people are coming and going? Do you want a security kit? Do you want to monitor your home's condition for moisture or things like that? Do you want to save energy? They're doing this clever packaging. It looks like, in fact, they've even said, we want to become an e-commerce platform for this kind of thing. To me, Kevin, tell me if you agree with this, it seems like Nest is sort of becoming the Apple with their thermostat and smoke alarm and their beautiful designs, but their closed system, to Smart Things Android or Windows, if you want to go back even farther. Which of these platforms do you think you prefer?
I'm an Android type of guy. I want to, I like to think about the ways you can connect things variously, and like, oh, what if I could set it so when my basement gets wet, where my a room in my house gets moist or too moist or something, it texts me, it emails my wife, and it also whenever someone opens the cupboard door, it pings me on my phone, which then turns the heat down to punish them for getting cookies. That also implies that I have sadistic qualities. But I really like, in my head, I like messing with all that kind of stuff. I love like configuring, things to be just so. I'm not sure that everybody does, but therefore I think it's kind of really smart for them to invite folks like GE and Quickset in, because if you can buy it at Home Depot, it doesn't seem that complicated, right? It's intriguing that you'll soon be able to kind of just hook this stuff up. And I think the hardest part is making it easy for people to kind of become IKEA-like shoppers of these things and get excited about all the things they might do, instead of having it seem kind of intimidating, all the things that you might have to set up.
I saw this commercial. I was watching TV at the gym, actually, and I don't remember what company it was. It was a big company. It might have been GE, where it was like a family, and the kids have come to the summer home, and the dad says, did you leave the house in good shape? And the kids go, yeah. And he looks at his smartphone, and he's like, no, they left the TV on and the AC running and the dishwasher. And, you see the house. He's able to sort of like turn the whole thing down, turn it all off remotely. And I was like, that's really descriptive. I think that's really going to appeal to a lot of people. You're already seeing some of the stuff where it's like, this isn't like Jetsons Future. This is save yourself some money. This is how, your family saves on electricity bills. It's really exciting.
Yeah, smart
There's
things.
There's also competing platforms, though. There's the Belkin Wemo system, I think. Mm-hmm. Philips has its Hue system, which is entirely lighting-based, but also totally in some, other, we need your Wi-Fi router to do this kind of thing. There is kind of a small arms race going for a very niche market right now, but it seems like SmartThings is trying to power itself up for that.
Yeah, I think SmartThings has done a really great presentation as to how to use home automation, because they have shop by category. And one of the things about something like the Hue or something like Nest, this idea that you have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to use this day to day, and what's the real hook? SmartThings kind of shows you how your life would be if you're going to do this. So I think their presentation is as important as anything else, because these devices, home automation has been around for a really long time. It's just to make it easy to have some central hub be on your smartphone. That seems to be the real hook here. So as long as the software works and there's no weird fragmentation, if these devices don't talk to each other, then that ruins all this automation stuff. It looks like SmartThings has been very intelligent in the way it's got its partners, its presentation, and I think they've made it easy. But there will be people who like the Apple Just Works concept. If the Nest device talks to each other and they don't have to think about it, makes things easier for the consumer.
Yeah, Dr. Mom in the chat room says she uses it, and she uses it with if this then that, with IFT. And she's like, that's where it comes in handy, because if this then that can link different systems together. So it's I think SmartThings, I think you're right. I think SmartThings is very smart in being an open platform and saying, hey, where the money's made selling this stuff. Let's let other people do the hard work developing everything, and we'll have a much bigger, wider, and compatible platform on which you can do this sort of thing. Time to fire up the randomizer, Jason. Our straw poll has been kicking it for the live audience, and the winner is, with 69% of the vote, Guy completely replicates wearable working Pip-Boy 3000. That's right. The same one you know and love from Fallout. Kevin, you were saying this was your favorite of the day, too.
Yeah, I mean, please, source code, whatever. This is amazing. Now he can, he can tell how radiated he is. That's what's most important. He can tell how radiated he is, how many bottle caps he has. Oh, look at that thing. It's a thing of beauty, and all its glowing green beauty.
Yeah, it's an actual Pip-Boy. It has working controls. You can go through all the menus. He's replicated the display. So if you're a Fallout fan, you need to talk to this guy.
In a crunch, you're going to need a little bit less latency. It really does seem like when he's switching from screen to screen. I mean, that's enough time where he might be doomed when he's flicking that switch.
Do you think he entered a really honest assessment of his stats into it? Do you think he ran around the block and then he's like, END 4?
This is exactly what I did.
Yeah. This is pretty sweet, though.
All right, Sawyer says it's time to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle.com. Sorry about the barking. Sawyer is not going to quiet down, is he? Gazelle, though, is going to give you money, and that's more important than any dog barking. Just don't pay attention to the dog barking in the background. You're thinking about getting a new iPad or a new iPhone or anything, you might want to sell the old one for some cash. So bark on down to gazelle.com, GAZELLE.com. Get you paid fast in cash payment within a few days. Offers are good for 30 days. That's the cool thing, too, is you tell them the condition. They'll even buy broken iPhones and iPads in some cases. And then you can lock in that deal for 30 days. It's exciting. It just makes you want to bark at the moon. You've got 30 days to send your device back, and then they'll turn it around, and they won't pay you in dog food, but they will pay you in PayPal. They'll pay you in cash. They'll even give you a 5% bonus if you use an Amazon gift card. So go to gazelle.com now. Get an offer for your iPhone or iPad. What's your iPhone worth? Take a minute, go to gazelle.com and find out. Do it now, though, because the dogs are a-barking, and your iPhone may lose value the longer you wait.
You should join
their support.
You should join the Gazelle pack, really.
You should. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Sawyer agrees. You should join the Gazelle pack, and thank them for their support of Tech News Today.
That ad read was not for the dogs, Tom.
No, thank you. It did go to the dogs, is I think what you're trying to say.
Oh, there we go.
How about the calendar, Sarah?
Tomorrow, the Nexus 5 is coming to T-Mobile for $45. Also tomorrow, the PS Vita TV comes to Japan.
Woo! Congratulations, Japan. We get the PS4, though. We're not hurting over here. What about some emails? Oh, actually, we might even have a message. That's right. John called us and left a voicemail on what he'd do with the, not Panini, Panono camera. That's that round ball Ayaz was talking about.
It didn't play. Hold on. There we go.
Hi, TNT crew. My name is John, and I know exactly what I would do with the Panono camera from TNT 881. In 2001, I created a virtual tour of a Victorian home for a Southern California museum using a regular film SLR and a lot of photos. The Panono would make it so much easier to update those 13-year-old panoramas. And, you know, it's a camera ball you toss. Cool. Thank you for making my commute better for me and safer for those around me for over 3 years.
Aw, thank you, John. Appreciate that and appreciate the call. What do you guys think?
I think that's great for real estate people. Just for the idea of like just chucking a ball up in the air to get those great panoramas, to get an idea of how places are. Because otherwise, I mean, you've seen the old school way of real estate where they have a camera and they're walking around. It takes a long time.
Although maybe not throwing it, because that would require really tall ceilings to really pull that off effectively.
You could notice a cathedral ceiling.
I know, right?
And the
but it would be
height.
awesome in that case, actually.
Just drop it over Barbara Streisand's place. She'll love that. All right, that is it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thank you all for joining us. Kevin Purdy, especially, thank you for being with us. Let folks know what you're up to these days. Where can they find your stuff?
Okay, I'm writing for The Sweet Home about all kinds of various home goods you should buy and spending way too many hours researching them. Blogging about mobile for itworld.com. I'm on Twitter at Kevin Purdy, and that's in various other places on and about the internet.
Look for him on an internet near you. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you.
Don't forget about our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com, where you can submit stories. You can vote on stories that have been submitted by others. You can even leave comments on those stories. Sometimes it's just a good place to talk about stuff you care about. Like, you know, there was the story about Veronica Belmont announcing that she's leaving Techzilla. And had a big old conversation in there. Not something necessarily we're going to cover on the show, but of interest to other users. And of course, we definitely use it to see what you're interested in that we are going to cover on the show. It, along with all of our RSS feeds and Google News and tech memes and all that stuff, help us figure out what to cover each and every day. So we thank you for participating. Get in there, technewstoday.reddit.com. Don't forget to email us too, tnt@twit.tv. Or give us a call like we had today. That was a great call, 260-TNT-SHOW. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/technewstoday. And, of course, subscribe to the podcast and get the show notes at twit.tv/TNT. We'll be back tomorrow with CNET's John Falcone as our guest. See you then.